Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works. We take a whole stack of research and surface the most interesting bits, and today we're diving into a pretty mind-blowing topic.
Yeah, mind-blowing is a good way to put it.
It's this concept of longevity escape velocity. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's that idea that we could reach a point where we're adding more than a year to our life expectancy for every year that passes.
Exactly. And the person who's really popularized this prediction is Ray Kurzweil, futurist, author, and former Google engineer.
He's the guy who's made some startlingly accurate predictions in the past.
Like what?
Well, he foresaw computers beating chess champions, the rise of mobile devices, even cloud computing, all of things that seemed pretty far out there at the time, but are totally normal to us now.
It's kind of wild to think how much the world has changed even in just the past decade or two.
Right. And it makes you wonder what the next decade will bring. Exactly. Which brings us back to this whole longevity escape velocity thing. It's based on this idea called the law of accelerating returns. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So Kurzweil argues that technological progress isn't linear, it's exponential. So instead of climbing a hill at a steady pace, it's more like riding a rocket that keeps getting faster and faster.
So the pace of change keeps accelerating.
Exactly. And that's why Kurzweil believes that we could be on the verge of some truly mind-blowing advancements, especially in fields like AI, biotechnology, and nanotechnology.
And those are the key players in this whole longevity game, right?
Absolutely. Each technology has its own role to play in pushing the boundaries of human lifespan.
Okay, so let's start with AI. It's already transforming healthcare in some pretty amazing ways, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing AI being used to diagnose diseases earlier and more accurately than ever before.
I read an article recently about an algorithm that can detect certain cancers way earlier than human doctors alone.
Yeah, there's some incredible work being done in that area. These algorithms are trained on massive data sets of medical images, genetic information, and patient records. They can spot subtle patterns and correlations that humans might miss.
So it's like having a superpowered detective working alongside doctors.
It is. And that kind of early detection is crucial for so many diseases. It gives us a much better chance at successful treatment.
It makes you wonder what other breakthroughs are just around the corner with AI.
It really does. And it's not just diagnostics. AI is also revolutionizing drug discovery, personalized medicine, and even the development of new medical devices.
Okay, so AI is a big deal, but what about biotechnology? That's another rapidly advancing field that has huge implications for longevity, right?
Absolutely. Biotechnology is all about understanding and manipulating the very building blocks of life, our genes. And one of the most groundbreaking tools in this field is CRISPR technology.
Ah, CRISPR. I've heard about that. It's a gene editing tool that's been making headlines, right?
Right. CRISPR allows scientists to edit genes with incredible precision. Think of it like a microscopic pair of scissors that can cut and paste DNA sequences.
So we're talking about actually going in and fixing the errors in our genetic code that can cause diseases.
Exactly. And not just treating the symptoms, but potentially addressing the root causes of many illnesses. It's still early days, but the potential is huge.
It sounds like science fiction becoming reality. But there's another piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet, nanotechnology.
Ah, yes, nanobots. That's where things get really futuristic.
Nanobots. So we're talking about tiny robots operating inside our bodies.
That's right. Imagine microscopic machines that can travel through your bloodstream, repairing damaged cells, clearing out toxins, even delivering drugs directly to where they're needed.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Are we really talking about having these tiny robots inside us, constantly maintaining our health?
It's one of the more ambitious goals in the field of nanotechnology, but the potential benefits are undeniable. Imagine having this continuous internal repair system that's working 24/7 to keep your body in top shape.
But hold on. How do we even create these tiny robots? And how do we make sure they don't go haywire inside our bodies?
Well, those are some of the big challenges researchers are working on right now. One of the key hurdles is biocompatibility. We need to make sure these nanobots can operate safely within the human body without triggering an immune response or causing any harm.
So we don't want our bodies attacking them as foreign invaders.
Exactly. And then there's the challenge of controlling them. How do we make sure they go where they're supposed to go and do what they're supposed to do? How do we prevent them from malfunctioning or causing unintended side effects?
It sounds incredibly complex, but let's assume for a moment that we can overcome these challenges. What specific tasks could these nanobots perform? What would they be doing inside our bodies?
Well, one of the most exciting possibilities is using nanobots to target and destroy cancer cells before they can form tumors.
So we're not just talking about treating cancer, we're talking about potentially preventing it altogether.
Exactly. And it's not just cancer. Imagine nanobots that could repair damaged DNA, preventing the mutations that lead to age-related diseases.
So we're talking about not just extending lifespan, but actually reversing some of the damage that aging causes. It's a pretty radical concept.
It is. And it raises all sorts of ethical and philosophical questions that we'll need to grapple with.
Right, because the potential benefits are huge, but so are the potential risks.
Exactly. And we need to have those conversations now, before these technologies become widespread. We need to think about the ethical implications, the potential for misuse, and how to ensure that these advancements benefit all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's a lot to consider, but one thing's for sure, we're living in an incredibly exciting time for science and technology, and the possibilities for extending human lifespan and enhancing our health and well-being are more promising than ever before.
I agree. We're on the cusp of a new era in healthcare, and it's fascinating to watch it all unfold.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into longevity escape velocity.
We've explored the roles of AI, biotechnology, and nanotechnology, and how these converging fields are pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
But there's another layer to this whole longevity conversation that we need to address: transhumanism. What happens when we go beyond just extending lifespan and start talking about fundamentally altering what it means to be human?
That's where things get really interesting. We're talking about enhancing our physical and cognitive abilities, merging our minds with machines, and even questioning the very nature of consciousness itself. It's a mind-bending topic that we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
So if you're ready to explore the frontiers of human potential and grapple with the ethical challenges that come with it, stay tuned for part 2.
Welcome back, everyone. We left off talking about this idea of transhumanism using technology to go beyond just living longer and actually enhancing what it means to be human. It's a concept that's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling, right? Like, where do we draw the line between enhancing ourselves and fundamentally changing who we are?
Yeah, exactly. So what kind of enhancements are we talking about here? What could a transhumanist future actually look like?
Well, some of the more common ideas you hear are things like enhanced memory, accelerated learning, maybe even direct brain-to-cloud connections so you could access information instantly.
It's almost like becoming a superhero. But wouldn't those kinds of enhancements create a huge gap between people who have them and people who don't?
That's a big concern. We already see inequalities based on access to technology, healthcare, education. And these kinds of enhancements could exacerbate those existing divisions.
Right. Like, would it become a status symbol to have the latest brain upgrade? And what about the people who can't afford it? Would they be left behind in a world that's rapidly evolving beyond them?
It's definitely a potential problem. And it raises all sorts of questions about who gets to decide which enhancements are acceptable, who controls the technology, and how we ensure that these advancements benefit all of humanity, not just a privileged few.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of ethics for a transhumanist future.
Exactly. We need to start thinking about these issues now before these technologies become so advanced that we can't control them anymore.
Okay, so let's say we figure out the ethical side of things. What would a transhumanist society actually look like? How would it impact our relationships, our work, our understanding of ourselves?
Those are great questions. I mean, imagine a world where people are living for centuries, maybe even longer. How would that change our concepts of marriage, family, careers?
Right. Would people have multiple careers over their extended lifespans? Would we need to rethink retirement altogether? It's mind-boggling to think about how these changes would ripple through every aspect of society.
It really is. And it's not just about individuals. We also need to consider the impact on the planet. Could our resources sustain a much larger population living much longer lives?
That's a huge question. And it brings up another potential challenge. If we figure out how to overcome aging and disease, how do we make sure we don't end up overpopulating the planet and depleting our resources even faster?
It's a delicate balance. We'd need to find sustainable ways to meet the needs of a growing population while also protecting the environment.
It sounds like a transhumanist future presents as many challenges as it does opportunities.
I agree. It's not a utopia or a dystopia. It's a complex mix of both. And ultimately, the future we create will depend on the choices we make today.
That's a powerful thought. It reminds us that we have a responsibility to shape the future in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. And that requires us to be thoughtful, to have open and honest conversations about the values we want to guide these technologies, and to consider the long-term consequences of our actions.
So far, we've covered the potential benefits and challenges of transhumanism, from enhanced abilities to ethical concerns and societal impacts.
We've explored how these advancements could reshape everything from our personal relationships to the very fabric of our society.
But there's one more mind-blowing piece of the puzzle that we need to explore: the potential of brain-computer interfaces to merge our minds with machines.
That's where things get really sci-fi, right? The idea of directly connecting our brains to computers, to the internet, even to each other.
It's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. So, are you ready to dive into the world of brain-computer interfaces and explore the ultimate frontier of human evolution?
Let's do it.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been talking about this incredible idea of longevity escape velocity, pushing the boundaries of human lifespan. And now we're getting to the really futuristic stuff, brain-computer interfaces. It almost sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it definitely captures the imagination. But it's not as far-fetched as it might seem. I mean, scientists are making some real progress in this area.
So, what exactly are we talking about here? Like, how would a brain-computer interface actually work?
Well, there are a few different approaches. Some involve implanting electrodes directly into the brain, which is obviously pretty invasive.
Yeah, that sounds a little scary.
It is. But it also allows for a very precise level of control. Like you could potentially use those implants to help people with paralysis regain movement.
Wow, that would be amazing. But what about the less invasive approaches? What are those like?
Well, there are systems that use sensors placed on the scalp to detect brainwaves. It's kind of like an EEG, but much more sophisticated.
So you're not actually going inside the brain, but you're still able to pick up on its signals.
Right. And those signals can be used to control all sorts of things, from prosthetic limbs to computers to even other people's brains.
Hold on. Other people's brains. Are we talking about telepathy here?
Well, it's not quite telepathy in the traditional sense, but researchers are exploring ways to use brain-computer interfaces to allow people to communicate directly with each other without having to speak or write.
That's wild, but also a little bit creepy, right? Like, what happens to privacy in a world where our thoughts could potentially be accessed by others?
That's a huge ethical concern, and one that researchers are taking very seriously. Any responsible development of brain-computer interfaces would have to prioritize security and privacy.
Right. We don't want to end up in a world where anyone can just hack into our brains and steal our thoughts.
Absolutely. But if we can overcome those challenges, the potential benefits are pretty incredible. I mean, imagine being able to communicate with loved ones who have lost the ability to speak, or even to share knowledge and experiences directly with each other.
It's almost like a whole new level of human connection. But let's zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture here. How might brain-computer interfaces change our understanding of consciousness itself? Like, what does it mean to be human if we can merge our minds with machines?
Yeah, that's a deep one. It raises all sorts of philosophical questions about the nature of self, the boundaries between human and machine, and the future of our species.
It's almost like we're on the verge of a new era of evolution 1, where technology becomes an integral part of who we are.
It's exciting and a little bit scary. But I think it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of this technology. We have a lot of work to do to figure out the ethical implications and the potential risks.
Right. It's not something to be taken lightly, but it's also a field that's full of possibilities. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be able to use brain-computer interfaces to unlock hidden potential within ourselves, to connect with each other in ways we can't even imagine right now, and maybe even to transcend the limitations of our physical bodies altogether.
It's a journey that's just beginning. And I, for one, am incredibly curious to see where it leads.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into longevity escape velocity, I think it's safe to say that we've covered a lot of ground.
From AI and gene editing to nanobots and brain-computer interfaces, it's clear that we're on the cusp of a technological revolution that has the potential to transform our world in profound ways.
We've talked about the incredible possibilities, extending human lifespan, curing diseases, enhancing our abilities, and even merging our minds with machines.
But we've also acknowledged the challenges, the ethical dilemmas, the potential risks, and the need to ensure that these advancements benefit all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's a lot to process, but ultimately I think it's a conversation that's worth having. Because the future is not something that just happens to us, it's something we create. And the choices we make today will determine what that future looks like. So let's keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to build a world where everyone has the opportunity to live a long, healthy, and fulfilling life.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.